Well, hello, everybody. Once again, I'm Pamela Bursler, CEO of Flower to the People. I really appreciate your joining us today for this Lunch and Learn. It is our second one. The last one was in February. And so we felt it was time to give you an update on our strategy for taking back the turf. Now, this is a commercial turfgrass conversion strategy. Essentially, we are seeking to transform these non-functional turf areas into regenerative landscapes that people actually use, that is done extremely cost effectively and supports all the biodiversity and water savings and carbon sequestration targets that we have. Uh, as a quick background, because some of you may not have joined us for our first Lunch and Learn, the strategy is different from a typical lawn to garden conversion. And the key things that make it different are that we are using seed in order to create this, transformation. We have a specialized proprietary seed mix that we are using in our pilot program. It has more than 100 species from 22 families. I'm going to tell you more about that later. But what's cool about seed is that it is actually bringing a huge amount of biodiversity to a site instantaneously. It's super cost effective to do this strategy, whether you purchase the seed from us and then have your own landscape contractor install it, or you engage Flower to the People to install it. Either way, it's extremely cost effective. It is no more expensive than laying sod, and actually, in many cases, a lot less expensive than that. We also are maximizing what we call animal inputs. We'll talk more about that in a bit. But essentially, this is a way to attract lots and lots of creatures, including humans, to the site. And there is a symbiotic relationship by doing that. The site is actually stimulated the more animals are on the site. So it's really important to us to take back the turf in that way, that turf becomes functional again. Optimized water management. We are prescriptively irrigating these sites at 1/2 inch of water per week. That's supplemental water. And we use the existing overhead irrigation systems, and it's very, very straightforward. We have a ETO-based process as well for teams that are really trained in water budgeting. But where we're dealing with teams that don't really have a good handle on water budgeting, we're just doing this very prescriptive 1/2 inch a week for supplemental. And then finally, this is a strategy that does not remove any organics from the site. Not only are we doing this without chemicals or mechanical removal, in other words, we're not having to cut it all out, but we are all the impact that we're doing in order to install the lawn, we are keeping the organics on site, and every time that site is mowed, all the organics stay on the site as well. So this is really what we are hoping to avoid on a large scale, because many lawn conversion projects end up looking a lot like this. And the key thing that is happening here is, first of all, it's relatively low biodiversity, and that's fine, for commercial sites. But what's really discouraging about this kind of lawn conversion is it's actually attributing to, or contributing to rather, the heat island effect in this city. In other words, these lawn conversions make our cities hotter. Why do we want that? And we absolutely want to avoid this at all cost. So our strategy, of course, is 1/10 of the cost of installing something like this, but it is also so far superior in terms of its benefits. And it's important to remember that commercial properties are actually already leading a landscape revolution. There's a lot of work happening on corporate properties. And so it really leads us all to ask the question, what would a polyculture lawn look like? And polyculture is the word that we use to describe our lawn generically, as opposed to a monoculture lawn. So your typical commercial lawn is essentially a monoculture. It may have a few grass species and some forb species that are struggling in it, but for the most part, it's being maintained mechanically and chemically to keep that species diversity very low. In our case, we are trying to promote as much species diversity as possible. And so that's why we call what we're doing polyculture. So polyculture lawn really isn't a meadow. This is an example of a meadow that was installed at the Air Products Global Headquarters. It's extremely designed mass plantings, whether meadows are established from seed or from plugs or a combination of both, they have a more designed element to it. And it's not really a restored prairie. This is actually a 3-acre site. This picture, rather, is from a 3-acre site that is adjacent to our site in Littleton, Colorado. And this is a restored shortgrass prairie that did a herbicide pass or two to remove the grass, the existing grass, and then it was drill seeded with seed. Herbicides continued to be used on the site to manage plants that come up that are unwanted. And it's managed as best it can be to be more like a prairie. What we are doing is not this. We are looking for something in between those two things. So these are two very quick examples of what it looks like. It has a very wide range of aesthetics, but the image at the top is from Orinda, California this past April, and the one at the bottom is from Grand Island, Nebraska. Um, these are both examples of polyculture lawn. Now, I mentioned before that seeds bring a huge amount of biodiversity. And in our 2025 Flower to the People seed mix, we actually have more than 100 different species from more than 20 families. And this is super important, not only because all that species diversity in seed brings this instant biodiversity of like 9 billion microbes per seed, but also because as you have this species diversity, the plants that will express themselves on the site are going to change over time. Seeds will lie dormant until the soil conditions are right for them to express themselves. And in some cases, seeds may never express themselves because the seed mix has been designed for a national distribution. We have seed in there that is not going to germinate in the West or is not going to germinate in the East or in the South or whatever. And that's okay. The seed that doesn't germinate becomes organic matter in the soil. The seeds that do germinate will germinate according to how well developed the soil is. In other words, the soil determines the plant. And this is a very important thing for us to understand because we expect that this stimulation of the site with the seed is actually going to lead to an eventual stimulation of the native seed bank that is on the site. So it's a longer term strategy, it's a multi-year strategy for achieving that native seed bank stimulation. But that is essentially what we're doing. And the process is called going through succession. That's really what we're trying to do here. And I'd love if you ask questions about that. Happy to answer those questions. The human impacts that we do on our site, we call the Nike Buffalo impacts. Every single site in our project has committed to conducting community events. And every time we have humans and, of course, other animals on the site, we are stimulating the soil microbiology. So, really, the entire strategy is about building soil microbiology in order to achieve a really resilient landscape. And we are really trying to put the fun back into functional turf by encouraging all these people, their pets, and other animals as well. We are working on a project to determine community acceptance. This is going to be a multi-year project where through surveys and through other forms of community engagement, we expect to get input on how people feel about these sites and using these sites, not just the aesthetics, but also the functionality of them. And one of the things that really impacts how people view the aesthetics of the site is the mowing strategy. So I'm going to talk a little more about mowing in a bit, but one of the key things that we do is mowing the edges of the site so that there is a cue to the care. And that essentially means that we're giving a signal to people who are viewing the site that, hey, this is being maintained. The stuff that is looking a little untamed or a little bit more wild, that's intentional. We have developed some new resources and they are available on the flowertothepeople.com website. These are the lawn guidelines that we provide to our site partners, but also they become the guidelines that help us to develop the custom mowing plan, irrigation plan, and site prep plan for each of the sites. Now, we are conducting a pilot study. And in fact, Take Back the Turf is the name of this pilot study, although it's kind of taking on a life of its own. Uh, the study is a 2-year study in which we are seeking to install the Flower to the People lawn, polyculture lawn on as many commercial and institutional facility sites as possible. The uh, important part of the study is, and again, I'm going to talk a little bit more about it in a second, but the most important part about this is that we provide the seed, you pay for the seed, but after you pay for the seed, the consulting, the custom mowing plans, the irrigation plans, all of that stuff is included in the price of the seed. And we put you into the pilot study and we actually do soil testing and the community assessments and other forms of testing and assessment in order to determine whether or not this is a strategy that could actually be rolled out across the country to convert non-functional turf into something much more usable and climate ready. The Flower to the People website has also been updated, and I invite you to come and take a look at the projects that we're putting up onto the site. This is an example of what the project site profiles look like, and you will see that we are now tracking so that the whole community can see, and also the site managers can see when the irrigation events and mowing events are planned, when we have community events planned, and so forth. And we keep updates of images on this site as well. So let's talk about the two 2024 pilot sites in a little bit more depth. We'd love to have your questions on this. Hopefully you can at some point get out to see these sites. One of them is in Arapahoe County in Littleton, Colorado, and this is a partnership with Denver Water and Arapahoe County. It's 125,000 square feet, a little bit over 3 acres, and we seeded this site in September of 24. And I did forget to mention that behind the scenes is Brent Zahn answering questions. And there is a picture of Brent Zahn out on the site before. So this is in the beginning of September 2024, and it's before the installation took place. The other picture that you see here is from our most recent event that took place on the site in May. Just to remind everybody how this process actually happens on a site, we have these photos to kind of take you through how simple the process really is. It's really not much more than what you would be doing for a typical overseeding of a site, of a lawn. The site is scalped and dethatched. That thatch is stored and held onto so that it can be used mixed with compost and used as cover to the seed once the seed is installed. After the scalping and dethatching, we do a thorough core aeration. And if you think about it, this is a little bit like mimicking what happens when millions of buffalo come over a site and create little divots in the ground. That's what we're essentially trying to mimic with the core aeration. After core aerating, we do broadcast seeding. We don't need to do drill seeding for this project, and so broadcast seeding is perfectly fine. And once the seed is down, we want to make sure that we cover it with a 1/4 inch of compost mixed with the thatch that came off of the site. So that goes down as the cover. And you can see here that it was seeded in September, and here we are 3 weeks later with germination on the site. Now, this site did go through winter, and so at the end of October, the irrigation was winterized, and there was no more supplemental water. They did have some rain events and also some snow events during the winter. The site emerged from that winter situation, or the winter condition. By the end of February, beginning of March, things started picking up. And in May of 2025, the middle of May of 2025, Arapahoe County and Flower to the People hosted their first community event on the site, and this was called Seeds and Soda. We have a lot of community events. I'll talk about them in a bit. But the Seeds and Soda event is really, there's a dispersal of seed during this event, seed mixed with compost. It is not necessary for that seed to be there. This is purely to engage people in understanding that it's a seed strategy, and to kind of get people out on the site to look at it, to begin to assess it. And one of the great things about this is it actually attracts birds because it's not being covered. The seed goes down, and then birds can come and eat all the seed that they want. And that's perfectly fine because that's adding diversity to the site. It's adding biodiversity, which is super important. During this event, we actually conducted one of our site assessments where we utilized a what we call the bingo card. You can see it there in the bottom left-hand corner, the plant bingo card, to see what different plants are we seeing germinating, starting to flower, etc. And you can see the picture on the right-hand side, there's quite a lot of species diversity on this site. So here's a better picture, kind of you can really see things are starting to grow. It's pretty much green all around, and yeah, it's looking really fantastic, and it's about to rain also. All right, so following that event on May 15th, we told the Arapahoe County Facilities Management that they should go ahead and mow the entire site. So this is the first mow for them. Now, normally in the West, where we don't, or not just in the West, but in places where we don't get that winter chill or that winter dieback, we want to make sure that we are mowing anywhere from 8 to 12 weeks maybe after initial germination. So we are waiting for those plants to grow to a height of about 8 inches. And once 50% of the plant cover is at 8 inches, we prescribe a mow of the entire site. we will definitely have to talk about this in just a little bit because on residential sites, it's extremely difficult to do because there is usually some flowering that's happening, a lot of annual flowering, and people don't want to mow. But it's much easier to get people to mow at the commercial sites. So once it hits that 8 inches, we mow the whole thing down to 4 inches. And the reason for doing that primarily is that there is a lot of seed that needs the light in order to start to germinate. And so we are looking to germinate as much plant material as we possibly can, as much diversity as we possibly can. Most of the times, the things that are mowed in that early stage come back and flower again. So it's really a stimulation of the entire site and kind of gets everything off to an even start. So that mowing event took place at the end of May, and we were very excited to see the images that came back at the beginning of June. The site has recovered from the mow. You can see that there is a lot of our native grasses coming back. There's quite a good diversity happening on the site and a very, kind of even distribution of plant material across the site. It's looking really good. I was scheduled to visit the site on the 26th of June in order to uh, implement a mowing plan that would now be the annual mowing plan. Mowing happens on a or should be happening on a site once a month, or it could be less frequent than that, but for sure once a month, where all of the edges are mowed so that there's that band, that cue to care band. And also the mowing is creating what we call crazy pathways or ways for people to engage with the site without having to feel like they're walking on something that's too tall. So we mow 4-inch tall pathways. We mow around plant material that we want to highlight. And we never mow exactly the same 2 months in a row, except for those beauty bands. So here we are again at the beginning of June. Um, I have a I have a site visit. You know where I'm going with this. I have a site visit scheduled for the 26th of June, and I pull up, and this is what the site looks like. So you could not, yes, it's a good thing no one on this webinar or listening to this webinar was in my car when I pulled up to the site because their ears might have fallen off. Um, Once I had an initial view of it and could step back and kind of start to figure out what happened here, it became pretty obvious what was going on. And so one thing I do want to point out is that the foreground, which is a little bit shadier, uh, received the proper amount of irrigation between the beginning of June and the end of June. The rest of the site did not, obviously. So guess where I was on the site acceptance meter. This is actually a format that we are going to be implementing on these sites in order to assess how the community thinks about it, how they feel about it. Guess where I was? Yeah, I don't think you have to guess. But the good news is, even before I knew exactly what had happened here, I walked the site and I realized there are these islands of hope. Um, Even though that site has really declined, there were several areas that were doing exactly what we would expect them to do. They had incredibly good biodiversity, very, very strong stands of native grasses that were coming up and getting established. Yarrow, which is just the Achillea millefolium, the species yarrow, was looking fantastic. It was really everywhere on the site, even places where it had not been irrigated. you could see that the plant material was there. So, I, you know, I was looking for things to give me hope. And then I walked over to the native prairie that was next to our site, and I saw that it had just been mowed in June, which is a good 2 months too late. And so I realized there is some kind of disconnect going on here with the site management, because it's not just our site, our side of the fence that is, not being paid attention to. It's really happening on both sides. So we sat down with the facilities management and we began to go through the irrigation guide and talk a little bit about what the expectations were for irrigation. And we realized that the rain automatic shutoff that the site had was set was set too sensitive. In other words, it was detecting a very minimal amount of rain and it was shutting off the irrigation. And since the irrigation was only happening once a week, that ended up giving us 2, 3 weeks even of completely shut off irrigation. So the site got zero supplemental water as temperatures were going up 100 plus degrees. And the total rain events over that 3 week period were only 0.3 inches. So this site was in serious deficit. We would have expected that it would have gotten at least an inch and a half over that period. And so we realized, yes, this is what happened. And so the result of that conversation was to really look at the prescriptive irrigation schedule. With the rotating sprinkler types, we are looking at about a precipitation rate of about a half an inch per hour. And so this site needs to be irrigated for, 60 minutes in an irrigation event. It can be cycle and soaked, but essentially it needs a total of 60 minutes each week. And in order to catch up now, let's see if we can add a little bit of supplemental irrigation. So we actually made the schedule for the next month of July, twice a week for 60 minutes each time. And there is some cycle and soaking that's happening, but making sure that it was getting that full half an inch of irrigation each time an event happened and doing 2 of those events a week. So you would say, well, wait a second, now you're irrigating a whole inch a week. Isn't this going to throw things off? We're still at deficit irrigation. It does turn out that the site in May was only being irrigated for 8 minutes a week. So we are at beautiful deficit irrigation. Um, and a typical lawn in the same situation would require at least an inch and a half a week of supplemental water. So even with our accelerated and sort of over irrigating for our plan of an inch a week, we are still 30% less than what a typical lawn would require in that situation. We have a community event scheduled for the 20th of July, and we are hoping that the lawn will be back looking like something green by then. And I want to just point out that, as I mentioned before, there are really 2 ways to approach the irrigation of these sites. We are using the prescriptive approach in the Littleton site. And this is, again, half an inch a week, and that's it. Half an inch of supplemental irrigation. You don't get quite the same amount of water savings as you would if you were doing a weather-based approach and monitoring the evapotranspiration and just irrigating to 30% of ETO, which is the approximate equivalent of half an inch a week. But it's a lot easier, or at least it should be a lot easier for a facilities manager to, I mean, literally set and forget once they get the right schedule in there. And once the rain sensor is set to only shut off if half an inch or more has been achieved in a rain event. So as I mentioned, we have another community event on the 30th of July. This one is a stomp and romp, which is essentially bringing people on the site to act as animals, especially on areas that don't have a lot of coverage on them or have species that we want to be reducing, like the Canadian thistle, and other things that we maybe want to manage a little bit more. We're going to do it with humans coming up and stomping on things, breaking them, you know, dancing on them, etc. After this community event, we do have a community event scheduled for September, and we are tentatively making that a dance party, and that is going to include school kids from all over the Littleton area. I am highlighting in this picture Ruby, whose mother sends us pictures of her sitting in the flower lawn on her daily walks. This is her Zen spot. We have another site. This site is in San Juan Capistrano in California, and it is a stormwater site that abuts the parking lot of the Costco wholesale in San Juan Capistrano. Santa Margarita Water District brought this to our attention and connected us with Costco. It was also seeded in September of 2024. And the picture that you see below is from January of 2025 when we held our first event. We held a community event there. It was a stomp and romp. We did a site assessment. You can see the bingo cards there. And people came out to learn about what was happening at the site, collect data, and also do that stomp and romp that I explained a few minutes ago. When we came back to visit the site in the middle of April, things were looking pretty good. There had been several rain events in between that January. In fact, this is during a rain event, as you can see in the picture. Several between that end of January and the middle of April. And that was a good thing because this site has terrible distribution uniformity. The irrigation system was supposed to be repaired prior to seeding, and it was not. And it still, as of this date, had not been repaired. And so there are very large areas. And in this particular picture, you can't see them very well because, again, there was a rain event that kind of made up for all that. So you can see the seed does respond to getting water. But these areas are, you know, very large, and they are, yeah. So this is an ongoing conversation with Costco that we were having at the time to try to get that irrigation repaired. And they had just changed their site managers, the contractors that were managing it. And so they were kind of in flux at this time. We told them, as soon as you get a new site manager, this needs to be mowed. So this had not yet had that first mow to 4 inches, despite the fact that we had told them in December of 2024 that they needed to do that first prescriptive mow. That mow did not happen. And so here we are in April. It still has not happened. And you can see, you know, the plants are going off, but it's a lot of the same plant going off. We came back to visit in the middle of May and noted that the plants are really starting to go over the edge of what we would consider to be an acceptable aesthetic. Although there is an incredible diversity happening here. I mean, at the time, I think we saw something like 15 different species expressing themselves on this site or more. We told the Costco management, which had actually changed since the April event or the April photo, we told them mowing is strongly encouraged. Please have your new contractor mow the site. When we came back at the end of May, expecting it to have been mowed, it was not. And the site had really gone over the edge. So a lot of what you saw in that earlier picture was Phacelia and red clover and other clovers. They all bloomed and were finished. And that the site, this is an unacceptable aesthetic as far as we're concerned. And as far as Costco is also concerned. The new management was confused about what the objective was when they saw this, and we told them this needs to be mowed to 4 inches as soon as possible so that you can start again. There's plenty of seed on the site. Let's mow it to 4 inches and get the irrigation repaired and just start again. And when we visited at the beginning of June, we saw that the site had been mowed not correctly, and that it definitely just needs a whole restart. So we are in conversation to figure out what the next step needs to be. So guess where we are on the site acceptance meter for this one? Not happy. All right. One of the really wonderful things about this pilot program is that we are doing soil testing and monitoring. Soil health, of course, and we are also taking a look at what's going on with the plants. In order to accomplish our objectives in soil testing, we are working with our partner, Dwelling on Carbon, Rosalind Hasselbeck, and she is with us today. And I am going to share. I'm going to share the slides, Rosalind. So if you would unmute and walk us through what's happening with the soil testing.
Great. Hi, everybody. So I've been doing the soil testing and monitoring for Dwelling on Carbon, for Flower to the People, for the institutional sites. And then separately, in addition to doing the science for Flower to the People, I'm also conducting residential projects for Dwelling on Carbon nonprofit with kind of more of a goal of environmental justice, a little bit different slant. But and because I now have just been getting in some of my year one data, I'm not going to talk about the institutional sites because I don't have any year two data for them yet. But I want to just give you just a brief look at what we're seeing. And this table doesn't show all the tests, but it does show some of them, including some physical tests. We measure infiltration, how long it takes for how many inches of water can infiltrate in an hour, measured with an infiltration ring. And that's what I was doing in that picture that Pamela just showed, was hammering with my mallet to get the ring in 3 inches deep, and then we add an inch of water. Another really interesting test that's been very revealing is using a soil penetrometer and seeing at what depth we get to 300 psi of compaction. And then some other physical tests as well. And then phospholipid fatty acid test is a biomarker for the soil microbiome. And then the Haney test is a metabolic test. So just giving you a quick run through on this slide, this is 9 different residential projects from the very end of 2023 through 2024. And I have an open space control, which I have gotten a range of different percentages of organic carbon. I think 5.9 is probably pretty fair. Most of the residential are quite a bit lower than that. And as you can see, many of these are also, I'm not sure if you can see my screen, but probably not. Anyway, most of these have compaction less than 3 inches below the surface. And on the next slide, I have a brief key, which I'm not going to go into detail, but just very quickly, the organic carbon is a dry combustion test. I mentioned the infiltration, and I will talk about the microbial biomass that's measured by the phospholipid fatty acid test. And 1,000 or less is poor. Above 4,000 is excellent. It gives you a little bit of an idea. And then the soil health test, which will be on the next slide, is based on both soil respiration, which is the microbial respiration, and also water extractable organic nitrogen and water extractable organic carbon. So that's kind of a measure of how things are functioning. We want to see it at least as 30 or above if possible. Or sorry, 7 is a minimum, 30 or above is very good. Let's look at the next slide. So now, first of all, just stepping back for a moment, using the same principles as the institutional projects, but because this is local, we're using local seed mixes with not quite as much biodiversity because it was just challenging to come up with that. But all of these, and there's several different mixes, so it's not as easy to compare, but all of the mixes have at least 8 different plant functional groups and at least 12 different species. And so this is very new. I haven't gotten all the data back from year 1, but very exciting that we're seeing that even though we were told that we probably wouldn't see increases in carbon after just 1 year, we are seeing increases in 4 out of 5. I think the reason we didn't see it in the 5th one is that maybe, I think if we're above 3.5, that probably isn't the limiting factor, but these ones that were super low have all improved. Very dramatic improvement in infiltration from from infiltration rate from 5.7 inches per hour to 7.5, 3.5 to 7.2, 3.5 to 13, and then in particular for the compaction from less than 3 to 9 inches, less than 3 to 6 inches, less than 2 to 6 inches. Very dramatic. And even in the case of the one that had high carbon, that did not go up, the microbial biomass did go up. So very excited to see this data. Again, preliminary. I have 2 more that I'm going to be getting results from soon, but I feel very encouraged to know that we really are getting the predicted results that we would expect, that producing this very healthy soil microbiome is indeed increasing carbon sequestration and microbial health. So yeah, that's basically what we're seeing now.
That is so fantastic. And we're wrapping it up in just a couple minutes, and then we can all come on and answer questions if there are questions about this. So I encourage you to ask your questions in the Q&A. In our project, we are doing additional monitoring beyond this soil, this amazing soil monitoring and carbon monitoring. That includes this water use data. So we're tracking that yeah, that's pretty important for the water agencies. We're doing plant and ecosystem diversity. The community acceptance project that I have been alluding to is something that we're getting underway. We have done surveys already, but we're going to really be getting into a lot of more community surveying, having those sort of instant I like it, I don't like it, QR codes, all kinds of stuff, and interviews, which I'm very, very excited about that. And then finally, we're tracking cost data so that we can, verify that this extremely inexpensive installation is something that continues to be inexpensive as the maintenance costs also decrease with the, no applications of fertilizer, or herbicides or pesticides, and the less frequent mowing, and of course, the less frequent irrigation. What you receive if you become a pilot partner or you refer us into a commercial site that, or an institutional site that accepts the project, we include you all in that. We want you all to know what's happening on the project. We consult for site preparation, we gather the data, we provide these customized plans and do technical assistance during the actual seeding, for prep for seeding. We have Zoom calls and remote check-ins. We create signage, and we are also working on case study materials for presenting at conferences. We're going to be presenting at the Soil Water Conservation Conference in the beginning of August, and also at CASQUA in September. And there are other conferences coming up that we're excited to, co-present with the site managers and also with the agencies that are associated with this. We have a lot of collateral materials that we are developing, these very cheeky signs that everybody seems to love. And what we're looking for are sites that are between 1 acre and 5. Truth be told, we'd accept something that was even half an acre. That's about 20,000 square feet. The site needs to be large enough in order for the study to really be conducted. An engaged property owner, we see the challenges with that with our Costco site. That's, it really makes it very difficult. An existing irrigation system that can be upgraded. They're willing to provide their water use data. They have a professional management team, a maintenance team, and there's public access to the site. It doesn't have to be at all times, but they can provide public access. So the types of sites that we're looking for are things like this. Existing stormwater basins are absolutely perfect. And that's what the Costco site is. And something like this would be perfect for this strategy. Also, high visibility sites. I was driving to an event and just got stuck at a traffic light and happened to snap this picture of the Santa Park. It's like, this is exactly where polyculture lawn is good. So please get in touch with us, flowertothepeople.com. You can learn a lot more there. You can email Anna E at flowertothepeople.com. Connect with us on LinkedIn, and we do direct install. So you can engage us to actually do the installation as well, or purchase the seed from us and have your own team do the installation. And coming soon, we have consulting and training. Stay tuned for Lunch and Learn number 3. I am going to go ahead. Oh, sorry. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. Like I've never done a webinar before. Okay. And yes, we will be sending people, the attendees, the recording, and also people who weren't able to join us today. It's going to be available on the website. You can watch it at any time. Were there any good questions, Brent? Oh, you're muted.
I have an airplane flying overhead that's
Oh,
if you want to read them, I'll chime in.
okay, so let's see. Yes. So we do have presentation materials available, and we are happy to work with you to, pitch deck basically. And we're happy to give that to you so that you can talk to clients about it. We also are happy to talk to people about it. That's not a problem. Our direct install capabilities do not compete with yours. So we are a backstop. And also if an agency had, multiple sites that they wanted to put into the program, a direct install with us would be really great. Great. Let's see. And then I think that's it. We actually also have a recording of the first Lunch and Learn, so you can kind of compare some of the data and also, what was happening with regard to interfacing with the facilities managers on both of the key sites. I do want to add that we are doing a project with the U.S. Green Building Council Los Angeles and have 3 polyculture lawns that are being installed right now, which is actually a little late for a Western installation, but it is an irrigated sites. They're all residential. So in our next Lunch and Learn, we will be adding some good insights into challenges that are presented by residential sites. And we'll have Rosalind back to talk about her installations as well. If there are no other questions, we are going to wrap it up. I want to thank everybody for joining us. Matthew, you raised your hand. Can you put it into the chat possibly? Or into the Q&A? Or are you just saying goodbye? Either way, give you a second to do that. Let's see.
John Skotsky's in the audience, so I just want to say hi, John.
Oh, that's great. All right, Matthew, sorry, maybe you're just saying goodbye. That's fine. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. These are really exciting projects. And we are very happy to talk to you and help you to sell them and also just to understand them so that we can get a lot more of them in the trial project while we're doing it. Oh, here we go. How to deal with poor management issues.
Smile.
Well, with a smile. Yes, any strategies. All right. So from both of the sites that we showed in this, that are currently in our pilot project, you can see that there are management challenges. And this is despite the fact that we are creating all this collateral, um, general collateral explaining how it all works, and then very specific collateral of an irrigation plan, a mowing plan, a site management plan for managing unwanted plants. And really, it's about training and about communication. So we are actually going to be launching a 90-minute kind of intensive with assessments. So it has like little quizzes in it, training just in the next, month or so. And this is going to be a requirement actually going forward for projects to qualify to even purchase seed from us. And this is something that we are going to have in place even after we emerge from the pilot project. We are, we really want to make sure that the contractors and the site managers who are utilizing our seed, who are utilizing this strategy, are very, very clear on the things that they are going to be responsible for. And I think that that is really, that's the extent of it. Professional management is critical. And hopefully we will have more professional contractors, large scale commercial contractors, getting trained, learning about the strategy, and we'll be, seeing more and sharing more. So that's all I can say. Brent, do you want to add to that? I mean, Rosalind, do you want to add to that at all?
I just think the idea that the additional training is really good, because even though the maintenance is maybe less frequent, it requires a different kind of eye. And so I think having that additional training is really important.
Yeah. Yeah, you put your finger on it, and I think Matthew did too, in the question where it says, is it, it's infrequent, so does it make it seem more complicated? And what's really interesting is it is the the problem is here. It's a shift in mindset. I just want to compare it to the complications of a turf removal and replacement with an entirely different kind of landscape. Right? So there's no comparison really in the complexity. We're talking about managing a lawn. It's exactly the same way that you manage a lawn, except that you don't put down fertilizer or use herbicides or pesticides. And you use the same equipment, the same everything, just less frequently. And I think that really the critical thing for us here is gathering this data about acceptance and sharing that with not just the pilot projects, but really with with everybody. The program that we are undertaking to ascertain community acceptance includes interviews of the management team and of contractors in the region, and also who are actually managing the site or similar sites, and talking to them, like finding out what is the issue, what is different, and that is going to help us, I think, going forward to really home in on how we get this to be more widely accepted.
I was going to say the word that comes to mind for me is it's more intentional. While it is a lawn, typically someone gets out there and they mow a diagonal or a straight or a circle, and they just kind of make sure that they mow it. And it's like, listen to your music. I don't have to think about this. I got the easy job today. Lucky me. If I'm on the ride-on mower, I got really lucky today. And it's being more intentional. So in a way, it's kind of empowering because you get to create something and you're responsible for it. But it's mowing with with being intentional. What do I want to highlight, or how do I want to take people? You're telling a story. It's just like Pamela said, it's all the same equipment. It's all the same process, but it's much more of a
A little bit more, yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, one thing we are doing are these mowing plans, I think are really empowering, because they lay out each month a intentional pathway mow. So, when the mowing is going to happen, the team knows, okay, I'm going from here to there with, 2 passes so that I have a 10-foot wide path. And this area needs to be cleared out, all mowed down. The edges need to be mowed, and then that's it. We don't touch anything else. So I think that having that on a piece of paper or, digitally, they can actually see it. Oh, that's the path I'm going to mow. I mean, at some point we could do it as GPS coordinates. It could be like getting out on your, farm equipment. It could, who knows? It could get pretty interesting. But yeah, I think it's all going to be about sharing information really for the next year or two. Is there a minimum size lawn that's suitable? For the approach. So I think ultimately when we come out of the pilot, what we're going to find is that it's easier to manage on a larger site than it is on a really small site. So I'm thinking, for example, like parkway strips, right? Where you have maybe like 5 feet, between a street and a sidewalk. That is going to be a more difficult place to see this. Now, I'm saying that, and as I'm saying it, I'm looking at the picture behind Rosalind. One of the things to understand is that you can mow this thing at 4 inches just like you would a lawn, so a typical lawn. So once a month, you're mowing the whole thing down. If you're doing that, then yeah, you could be doing parkways because you have 4-inch plant material. Your diversity decreases dramatically. You may still get the soil health benefits, but your actual plant diversity is going to drop because things are being mowed, all to that height. In a typical flower to the people lawn, we're seeing plants of a lot of different heights. And the mowing strategy is highlighting things that are maybe taller and doing their thing. Like we have sunflowers in the mix, and we have a lot of asteraceae in the mix. So those are very showy flowers. When they're happening in the spring, summer, and fall, you want to mow around them. You don't want to, and some of them can get as tall as like 3 feet or even taller, depending on the soil conditions. So the point is, I think for now, it's bigger sites are better, but eventually if it becomes an accepted practice and it replaces traditional monoculture seed, then yeah, sure, we could be even doing parkways and very narrow spaces. So yes, so working with a botanic garden would be fantastic. Turn us on. City parks, turn us on. There are so many of them. It's like there are 50,000 acres of non-functional turf in California alone. Another 25 or 26,000 acres of non-functional turf in Colorado. So, and this is a strategy that can be employed not just in water deficit environments, but also in water rich environments. The East Coast and Midwest are many, many, many municipalities are implementing lawn to meadow strategies because there's demand for it, especially in these commercial sites. And the challenge with that is they're applying a huge amount of herbicide in order to achieve these meadows. They're doing a lot of application of herbicide afterward to maintain the meadows and a particular aesthetic. So this can be done a lot. It's a lot more simple, a lot more cost effective, and no herbicides, pesticides, or fertilizers. So we think the applications across the country are really huge. All right. In the absence of further questions, what'd you say? Oh, there is a Q&A? What? let's see. Yes, absolutely. So the question is, would we recommend this for the CII, for the public and commercial institutional areas for meeting? It's AB 1572 in California, and Colorado has a similar similar one, which I can't think of the name of it right now. But absolutely, that for those of you who don't know what that is, this is a non-functional turf irrigation ban. So it's banning the application of potable water on non-functional turf over a very short time frame. I mean, it's really coming up in like the next 3 years. Or that's the objective. And the response has been really on the side of the regulatory bodies. It's been how do we remove this lawn and replace it with some other thing? In some cases, it's just rock or just mulch or sporadic plants. And we are trying to get ahead of that and make sure that we are not heating up our cities at a time, I mean, especially in the West, where the implications of hotter cities are more fires, more droughts, more flooding, like all these things that we're really trying to eliminate uh, can be mitigated by keeping our cities cool. So in order to keep our cities cool, we have to have plant material. In order to have plant material, how do we do it cost effectively? Let's do it by keeping the grass in place and overseeding it with something like this, making it polyculture. And oh, by the way, we are meeting all of the targets. We meet the water savings target, we meet the biodiversity target, we're meeting soil health targets, carbon sequestration, and so forth, exceeding those. We're meeting, and now the question is, can we meet that public acceptance and that management acceptance goals? So that's where we are.
And it's
I'm sorry, go ahead, Brent. What did you say?
and it's now functional.
And it's now functional, right? Because we actually are bringing the community in to experience the site in a way that they haven't previously. Yes, exactly. So there's that. Plus, we're getting people out in nature, which is another thing. Like, why are we removing landscapes that people can actually play in? I don't know. I don't think this is the time to be doing that. That's personal. That's a goal of Flower to the People. I know Dwelling on Carbon also shares that goal. So does our partner Green Cover Seed, which does supply us with our seed mix. So the whole team, yeah, we're looking at it holistically. All right, so thank you very much for that, Carol. I love this idea of the LA County Arboretum. I think that we should definitely talk to them about taking a chunk of that grass, because here's the thing: when you have an area of grass that you are putting into polyculture lawn, it continues to be useful in a setting like a park or in a setting like a botanic garden. It's not now suddenly not you can't walk on it, which is why I showed the sign for the prairie restoration, which is almost 2 years of not being able to walk on it or not being able to interact with it. We are encouraging interaction not only from day one, but on a regular basis. So it really is a whole different it's a whole different thinking around this, what is now non-functional turf idea. All right. Thank you so much. It is definitely, please do cemeteries. Thank you, Melina, for that. We'd love to be connected to cemeteries. There's a lot of lawn to meadow activity happening in cemeteries. So, so yes, we would love to be connected. And it's up to you all to connect us to those sites. Reach out to us, Anna E at flowertothepeople.com. Go on to the flowertothepeople.com website, send us an email, connect with LinkedIn, and have an amazing day. Thank you for joining us.